Hi everyone and welcome to the GetVoIP Hangout. We're going to discuss things on why is choosing a VoIP service so hard. The first question I've actually got is what type of review would best help users with their VoIP service provider decisions?
There's shoppers that are looking for VoIP services. It could be for a small business of 5 users, 10 users. They could be reading a review from a business owner that wrote a review for someone that's only got 1 line or 5 phones, or it doesn't necessarily mean that their input on that provider or on that service directly can benefit that shopper's needs. What would you say, Eric, here?
I think that's 100%. I mean, just because someone uses a service or has experience with a service doesn't make them an expert on that service. Certainly their input is valuable, but without knowing their exact setup, their bandwidth or their internet type, without knowing how many employees that they have, it's very, very hard to draw an apples to apples comparison. So in my experience, I find it best to look at professional and independent reviewers. There's a number of them out there. And then, of course, white papers and industry reports as well. Things like a market analysis are a pretty good place to start, and then kind of draw your conclusions from there.
A lot of times what happens is that actual providers do provide, testimonials directly on their own websites, right? So,
of course.
And I'm sure you'll probably agree here, but most of these providers, they'll only, show us, the good reviews, like the most positive ones, definitely either upselling them or saying this is great and so on. They don't really talk about what service that these customers have. They don't really talk about what price points. That's where I would say that the independent review sites come in. You have GetVoIP as one, you have Top 10 Reviews, you have VoIP Review. There's a bunch, and also with those reviews, you also kind of have to be, very careful with the way you get those reviews, right? I think we mentioned something like people are just jumping into writing a review, especially when they've experienced a negative encounter, like an outage, and that kind of triggers. I would say that's one of the biggest triggers for negative reviews.
One thing that I'd like to ask the panel is when viewing the reviews that are either on a provider site or on a site like GetVoIP or or any of the other VoIP review websites out there, what's one of the best ways that a user can, say, look at these reviews and tell a real review from a fake review?
I think, go ahead.
There's, for example, I, as myself, from someone who owns a review site, I can tell you, we're trying to make our reviews, be backed up by real people, right? So one way when you can tell is it all just positive reviews, right? Is the provider just 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 all across the board? Is it all just, okay, this is stellar, or you can just pick up on the lingo used in the review, and I mean, if it all just sounds like too good to be true, most probably it is. I mean, everybody's probably had 1 or 2 negative experiences, I would say, with providers, and it's hard to say. I mean, there's many things that come into play. What would you say about that, Eric?
I think that's true, and if I can just provide a little perspective with some alternative industries. Well, first, if you were to look at reviews of some classic telecommunications companies like Sprint or AT&T or Verizon, you're going to find some bad reviews there. So, I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of, a grain of salt, so to speak. But I think a good sort of rule of thumb is, A, look at the total number of reviews, right? See how many you're actually looking at. What's the sample set? And then, as you said, anything that's, if you've got 1,000 reviews and you've got all 5 stars, that seems very unlikely to me. Usually what I'm looking at, if I go, for example, Yelp, and I'm looking for another type of service, and I see a restaurant, I see a lot of reviews, I see 3.5 stars, for example. Actually, that's my favorite review on a website, because that means that they've had enough people that have liked it, and there's going to be some bad experiences, and I just kind of accept that. No one has a perfect day. I think one other thing that I look for, and this might just be a personal preference, but I weed out anything that has an overtly emotional context to it. Someone's raving about it or hating it. I tend to kind of take those and just kind of put them on the far sides of the bell curve and say, well, this person something's going on here. usually a review that I look at is going to have some sort of a methodical approach. They might, look at some feature sets. They might look at customer support. They might look at call quality. If I see some, different points, different important points kind of broken out individually, to me this means the person is actually doing a review based on some kind of intelligent analysis.
Right, and it's backed by user experience, and it's not just the one-day experience.
This guy sucks. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of reviews, for example, one-line reviews. We're actually putting in a criteria where, we require a certain amount of words to be backed by the review, and we don't just take a review from someone who's had the service for like, I would say, 1 day or 1 week or whatever, right? So you have to get to know the provider, and before you can definitely say something about that provider. So I would say that users should definitely, look for, detailed, extensive reviews. Excuse me. Like you said, Eric, the 3.5 reviews are definitely, important reviews to take into consideration as opposed to just the 5-point reviews.
Yep.